On the 6th of November 2014, Gavin Short, member of the Legislative Assembly at the time, instigated a debate on whether the 2014 Crimes Bill needed to be amended. He argued to include a new law that prohibited the promotion of territorial claims over the Falkland Islands.
516A, Promotion of Territorial Claims over the Falkland Islands. 1. A person who does any act which A. asserts, promotes or supports, or in any way tends to assert, promote or support a territorial claim to the Falkland Islands by any state other than the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and B. is reasonably likely to and does annoy or cause distress to any person ordinarily resident in the Falkland Islands, commits an offence. The penalty: imprisonment for 3 months or a fine at level 4 on the standard scale, or both. 2. Acts referred to in subsection 1 include displaying in a public place or in any private place without the permission of the owner or occupier of that private place. A banner containing words in any language that falls within the meaning of subsection 1A. B. Any nationalistic paraphernalia, such as a flag, whether or not defaced, with symbols or with words in any language.
However, former MLA Gavin Short was outvoted by his fellow members of the Legislative Assembly. The amendment to the bill was not passed due to concerns about what the current police powers of arrest were and if the amendment would violate constitutional human rights.
Well, I listened carefully to Councillor Gavin Short's presentation in the Legislative Assembly, and I thought hard about the amendment that he put forward, and I voted against it because I wanted to explore just exactly what we have got in place rather than perhaps knee-jerk and try to introduce something at that time. And I, in the House, asked that the Attorney General looked at our laws and saw exactly what we have got in place. That includes the aviation legislation about taking any form of ammunition or whatever on aircraft. And I wanted to see just what we have got in place and to ensure that the security services are interpreting it correctly.
We have to be very clear about what the law is and how we implement it. And we have to be very clear that if we start trying to implement new law, that it conforms both with our own constitution and with the provisions of UN law and the ECHR, which are the European Convention on Human Rights, on which our constitution is based. So, are they trying to provoke us? I don't know that for a fact. Do we know who's paying their flights here? No, we don't for a fact. And that's the sort of evidence I think that we would like the police to collect over the next several months. And if there's an issue there that we have to deal with it, then we should deal with it.
2 months later, members of the Legislative Assembly were presented with a petition signed by over 500 people requesting action in relation to Argentine visitors wearing Argentine military uniforms and waving Argentine flags. This petition caused ripples within the community and led to a public meeting on flag bearing in the islands.
Personally, I'd just like to say one thing, if I may, and that is we are a free, democratic, modern society. Those freedoms were won at great cost in 1982. We have a modern constitution, and that constitution enshrines the right of these islands to determine our own future, the right of self-determination. It also enshrines the right not to be discriminated against on race grounds, of colour grounds, or of belief. And it enshrines the right of holding our own views and of expressing those views, the freedom of speech. And so, whilst we're all aware of the distress that some of our visitors are causing in the islands, we must not allow that action to in any way endanger the freedoms that we have. I would just like to say that.
Fast forward 4 years and the subject of flag bearing is still a point of contention within the community. One key challenge with implementing a law that bans the waving of flags is that it raises issues to do with provisions in the Constitution. Although freedom of expression is not an unqualified right, It must be in accordance with the law, proportionate and non-discriminatory. A word of caution about banning defaced flags, as our own flag, along with many others around the world, are vexillologically defaced, in our case with a crest on the blue ensign.
We've pushed as hard as we can to see if we can introduce laws that would enable us to help control this. But the point we're always up against is that if we try to infringe one element of the right of freedom of expression, we run the serious risk of restricting everyone's freedom. Point being made, well, if we restrict flying of flags, our constitution doesn't forbid the flying of any particular national flag. You could end up with a situation where someone displaying any other flag, a Falkland flag or a British flag, could end up in trouble.
There are provisions in the Constitution that refer to a person's right to freedom of speech being limited in certain areas. So, for example, a person is not free to make racist comments, a person is not free to use hate speech, even though that isn't very clearly defined. There are some provisions in there that are relating to public order offences, but again, there are no specifics in there. And I think we would need to be very careful, as Barry has said, about creating a law that specifically is designed to enact parts of that provision.
We have current laws where the police can take action, and indeed they did take action when someone actually reported, and if an islander is suffering alarm and distress because of the actions of some of these visitors, either waving flags, banners, or wearing stuff that upsets them, and they report it, and they keep saying, I suffer alarm and distress because of this, the police will take action.
Although there are no specific laws banning flags, there are public order offences in the Crimes Bill 2014 that may be triggered.
We have a whole range of public order offences. At this stage, they are what they call applied imperial enactments, so they're UK law that applies here, but very shortly it will be Falkland Islands law in similar terms. And depending on the numbers of people present, it could be anything from a riot legislation, which can be or a fray, right through to the sort of harassing and anti-harassment legislation that covers these areas. We proudly protect human rights. We proudly have a very good system of law based on a constitution which protects all here, which is a higher standard perhaps than some of our neighbours, and that means that we have occasionally to take the higher ground.
If a case falls under one of the public order offences and it goes to prosecution, it must pass two tests, an evidence test and a public interest test. Other factors like the context of an incident and the intent of the act must also be considered. Although no new law has been passed specifically on banning defaced flags, a pamphlet is in the process of creation for distribution to tourists who are visiting the islands. The pamphlet will contain guidelines on how to interact appropriately with the environment.
We just had first sight, well, Mark and I have just had first sight of a leaflet which is being put together by a group, I think, led by the Director of Emergency Services, to inform all visitors coming in. A very simple leaflet, but very, very clear about what is acceptable behaviour and what is not.
Okay, so yeah, this is a piece of work that's been undertaken by a group across FIG looking at how we might prevent some of the behaviours that we don't like to see in the islands. It's a very basic, sort of threefold little pamphlet, still in draft form, I should point out, it's not finalised yet. But so it's giving guidance and advice about not waving flags, about not, sort of taking part in provocative behaviour that might cause distress in the community. It also touches on collection of items from battlefield sites, so whether that's ammunition cases or, as we saw earlier in the year, an actual live round, explaining very clearly that things like that cannot be carried on the aircraft and shouldn't be removed from the sites in the first place. So it's general advice really about good behaviour while you're in the islands.
But it'll be in English and Spanish, so that anyone coming in cannot deny the fact that they didn't have full warning of what was acceptable behaviour.
At least there won't be a defence of not knowing what was acceptable and what wasn't. So by spelling it out very clearly, you're setting those conditions that you expect people to abide to. So then if they do behave badly, you can actually say, well, look, you understood, you were given this, there's no excuse. Whereas perhaps in the past there has been some get out clause there that someone might not have been aware of what was acceptable.
FITV contacted both the Royal Falkland Islands Police and the Attorney General's Chambers in relation to this report. Both declined to comment on the subject. However, if you have been affected by this issue, please make sure to report it to the police immediately.